He knew what he'd do when he woke up at 2 a.m. beside the sweet, warm old lady who had loved him for 50 years. He was going to leave. He sighed, air in, air out. So hard to inhale and exhale these days. I'm old, he whispered so softly his bride would not hear him. Not wake up, talk him out of it. I'm old, I've outlived my usefulness. I'm going to go away and die. He rose. He knew how to rise from the bed he shared with her without waking her. Had learned early on when he worked 3 jobs to take care of his family, and her sweet belly bulged with their first child. He sighed again. I love that boy. I love them all, and they love me. But when they look at me with all that love in their eyes now that I'm of no more use to them, how it hurts. Their love hurts like daggers. I can't stay. I can't tell them how I feel. One more day with my family, one more look that says, I love you, and I'll fall to my knees and cry out. I'll cry out, don't love me, I'm a waste of time. I can't stand to have you love me now that I can't do anything for you anymore. The tears came, a flood, nose full of snot. He almost cried out, no, screamed in goddamn pain. But that would have awakened her, and she'd know. Her womanly intuition would know, and she'd talk him out of it. Then she and his kids, grandkids, great-grandkids could watch him fall apart like a once mighty oak tree, dropping leaves and then branches before falling. He could look forward to them gathered around his ignoble deathbed, watching him gasp and gasp, weeping for him, saying, I love you. Remembering him as a frail has-been who died with no job to do, no fight to win. Damn that. Damn that. He hurried to the far bathroom, silently, somehow. Closed the door, fell to his knees. Leaning against the pink commode, and she loved pink, so he wouldn't fall to his face, shot down by the loss of his manhood. How he wept. Jesus alone at Gethsemane, no one to hold his hand, no shoulder. He didn't want anyone. Jesus had awoken his disciples. Couldn't you watch and pray with me for 1 hour? Hell with that. Hell with being Jesus and asking others to share his pain. This man, this old man, he'd bear his own pain. Alone, down the road to some strange city where no one knew him. He'd find a park. He loved green things. He'd sit down on a park bench, and he'd die. No argument. He was alone. He loved a lot of people. His circle of friends and family was a great one, as great as the orbit of the earth around the sun. But he'd always been there, every time. When any one of those friends and family had ever needed anything from him, to do or to give. And now he couldn't give anymore. Well, damned if anybody was going to give him anything now that he had nothing to give back. Tears always end. He wept himself dry, blew his nose, rose to his feet, shuffled to his den. In the top drawer of his desk, he had always deposited his keys and his wallet at the end of each day. He opened the drawer, laid his wallet and keys on the desktop. He pocketed his keys. He'd have to lock the door behind him when he left. From the wallet, he drew all the cash he had except a $20 bill. $20 would supply him with all the nourishment and drink he'd need in order to keep his strength as he walked the distance to that strange city he was going to. The rest of the cash he arranged neatly on top of the desk. When his true love saw the cash, she'd figure it all out. She knew him that well. He did not need to leave a note. The wallet containing the lonesome 20 went into his pocket. The coroner's office could identify him by the contents of his wallet. Get word to his family. He didn't want them to wonder what had become of him. Let them weep over his body. Pay their respects. He owed them that, and it was the last thing that he had to give. Out the door, down the road, he was on his slow old man stride to that strange city and the park bench where he would die. Part 2. His mother was watching from the next place. I call it the next place, not heaven, and in my theology there is no hell. The next place is not about reward or punishment, and the ones who created the universe do not sit around on golden thrones while their followers shout praises for all of eternity. The ones are much too busy and having far too good a time to need that kind of praise. The next place is about being still and thoughtful, as long as it takes, until it comes to you what you want to do next. And here's the thing that came to me in my vision quest. I will tell you about my vision quest if you're my friend and you have the time to listen. Our mission in life, this one and the next one, is to grow to understand what you want, really want. Not what the preacher, the government, convention, or the millions of deceiving distractions to which you may become addicted make you think that you want, but don't want. What you really want. You will figure it out now or in the next place, what you really want. And then, once you know what you want, you will be given the tools, and you will know how to find and do what you want. We are not here to question our goodness or our evilness. We are all good, if we can be honest about who we are. It is deception and self-deception that creates evil. It is believing we want what we don't want that creates evil. It is not the love of money, but the deception that we want money more than love. That is the root of all evil. I'm sure Jesus said it right, but they wrote it down wrong. How could I know if Jesus didn't know? Don't go to the mountain to cry out to God, what is your will? And then expect an earth-shattering voice to thunder down from heaven, giving you some mission to which to devote your life, no matter if it's something that you hate doing. No. Search your soul, your own soul. Ask for information, but never advice. For no one else can know your heart well enough to tell you what you want. All they can tell you is what they want you to want. Find and do what you want. That's your mission. The ones who create don't fight. They don't fight on this issue during the years, however many you spend with what our atheist friends call the real world, believing this is the only world, the only life. Mostly in this life, the ones watch you, catch your attention when they can, and make you know you should be looking inward and finding your heart's desire, and then following it. But in the next place, it is the only order of business, and you go nowhere else until the certainty of your heart's sweetest desire comes to you, and then you go get it. They're generous, the ones. Any knowledge you seek, they will help. They will help you come to understand that knowledge. But in the end, you alone come to know, do and have what you want. and time. They give you time. So much time to think, to ponder, to wait for the sense of certainty that eventually comes to every honest heart. And every heart becomes honest, given enough time. And then on the day of understanding, the ones give you everything you need to do what you want. And they send you anywhere in the universe, any point in time, in order for you to go and do and have and give what you want. And at the very moment, the old man who felt he had outlived his usefulness sat down exhausted on that park bench to face death, away from home and alone, his mother, who had been waiting in the next place for her insight to come to her since the old man had been a boy. Well, the mother knew in that instant what it was that she wanted. I want to save my son. Part 3. She came to him not as the calm, kindly, modest lady he remembered from his first memories of his mother. No. She came to him exactly as the adventurous, saucy teenage girl she had been on the exact day of his conception, with the plan to treat her son as she treated every man in those days, so he would not guess too soon that she was the lady who had carried him, changed her ways for him, and been the best mother she was capable of being for as long as she had lived after his birth, which was nowhere long enough. So there he was on that bench, struggling to get air in and out of his lungs, when he saw her striding towards him across the green lawn of the park. She looked right at him, with fire-dancing, dangerous eyes, a winner-take-all smile upon those perfect lips. The old man smiled to himself, his first smile in too long, and then he laughed right out loud, his first laughter, and even longer. Old man, he said, and he didn't care who heard. Old man, you've died, and now you're in the afterlife. I know that for a fact, for no woman has looked at me that way that this lady is looking at me since I was young and full of muscle, and that devil may care look dancing in my eyes. No, I'm not living anymore. She's a spirit being come to get me. Not bad, better than I expected. If I could get word to my people that a woman this beautiful came to be my guide to the afterlife, they wouldn't grieve at all, but my wife would be jealous, so I won't try to send them word from beyond. The lady walking his way had red hair, heartbreaking in its beauty and flowing down her back to her waist. Her jeans were tight, her figure was beyond art. Her white tank top's only mission was to tell the whole world that she was proud of the way she was put together. She walked right up to him, sat down beside him, no regard for his personal space. Supple young thighs pressed against his, a body beyond imagination pressed against his rib cage. Heat. She smiled that saucy smile, and he thought he was in love. But no, not exactly love, something else. Something he couldn't figure out what. Not exactly in love. Something else. She looked him dead in the eyes, and she slid her warm arm across his bony shoulders. Her eyes were green. My mother had green eyes like yours, he said. Well, honey, your mother must have been a hell of a looker, she said, in a voice he knew and loved, and fell asleep too when it had been singing, "Old Danny Boy and the Mystery Boy." Tears surprised his eyes, and he let go. Didn't stifle the anguish like he'd done when he'd been standing beside his sleeping wife. Let it go. Wept. Fell against her. This crazy lady who was kind to useless old men dying on park benches. Fell against her. And she held him like she loved him. The tears and racking sobs just came on. Tears and snot flooded down across the front of her tight white tank top. And still she held him, making soft noises. Oh, God, I'm dying," he gasped. "Maybe not, honey," she said gently in that voice he knew. But how could this lady have that voice? Maybe not today. He wept himself dry like the desert, sighed when he could sob no more. For some reason it was easier to inhale, easier to exhale. Didn't feel quite so weak, quite so feeble. "What do you mean?" he said. She pulled a big red bandana from her back pocket and made him think of me and Bobby McGee. "Blow your nose, honey." That was a hell of a cry. He blew. Couldn't believe the river of snot that stained what had been her prized possession. Handed it back to her. She held up a hand, the one that wasn't draped over his shoulders, and had been since she'd walked into his life. "You keep the bandana, honey. You'll need it again, and I've done all the crying I'll need to do, so long as you don't die on me." He looked at it, a special gift. He thought he'd left his keepsakes behind, thought he had walked out of the world of prized physical possessions. But here was one more prized physical possessions to tie him to this physical world. "Oh," he said, "but what did you mean? Maybe I won't die today." Before she answered, she blinked. Then she lifted herself up to his full height and kissed him. "You're only dying because you want to die. Maybe you can stop wanting to die." "When I saw you walking my way," the old man said, "I thought you were a spirit come to take me away. I thought I was already dead." She laughed. He went on, "But then you sat down right beside me, and even at my age, I felt desire. And I said to myself, nope, not dead." She laughed. He went on, "But you're right about me. How could you tell just by looking at me that I want to die?" "Sonny," she said, "there's a simple question, and I can answer it. I know the look of a human being wanting to die, because I wanted to die too." "Why?" he asked. "Because my daddy was a hellfire preacher in a black suit who waved a black Bible. All he could do was wave that Bible and yell about how people have to suppress every natural desire and pray for forgiveness all the time or burn in a devil's hell. That was Daddy. Mama was a nervous wreck, grown old while she was young. She had eyes that couldn't rest and hands that couldn't stop shaking. And me, I was 14 and feeling every desire a young girl should feel, hating my daddy and wanting to run away even if it meant starvation. Loving my mama and praying to something that I knew was there instead of the insane God Daddy believed in. And I wasn't praying for me, never for me. I prayed for Mama. I prayed, whoever you are, whatever you are, I know you are good. Let me find some way to save my Mama. Let me get her out of here. But I could never think of a way to get her out without first growing up and getting a job where I could support her and myself. And then one day I ran out of time. She came to me, she held me, she kissed me, and she said, I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't find a way to save you from him. She said that, my mama. Then she took a deep breath, fell forward, and died in my arms. My mama, who'd been praying she could save me from him the whole time, I'd been praying that I could save her. Neither one of us could ever find the answer, and now my mama was gone. I held her hand until her hand grew cold, and that was the moment My tired, discouraged old friend, that was the moment that I wanted to die. The old man had thought he'd cried all his tears, and now he found more. He pressed her beautiful bandana against his eyes until those new tears flowed. Then he took her hand in his. And found it one more time. That's something that he could do for somebody who needed him. Something he could give. The human touch. Human understanding. I love you, he said. And he smiled. It was a brave smile. And he had been thinking all his courage was gone. She looked at him. I believe you do, she said. Hand back that bandana, mister. I think I need it after all. He gave it back. And she cried as he cried. And he held her as she held him. He felt like a man again. She gasped after a long time. Then he spoke, as he had known she would. Then she spoke, as he had known she would. I didn't kill myself that day. I lived because as badly as I wanted to die, and I really wanted to die, I wanted to kill my daddy. Even worse. Kill him with my bare hands, and I knew I could. Didn't matter, he was 3 times my size and built like a draft horse. Did you kill him? The old man asked. No. I wanted to kill him, planned to. But I wanted to give him 10 years without Mama, without me. Give him 10 years to see if he had become sorry, if he could change. So instead of waiting around to kill him when he got home, I stole all the money he had stashed, this tithe money from the church, and I ran away. Figured I'd come back in 10 years, see if he was different, if he was still the same black Bible-waving son of a bitch after 10 years. If he was still that, I was going to kill him. You ran away? The old man asked. You were only 14? Yep, she said, lifting herself erect from the strong old man, the mighty oak that wasn't dropping leaves and branches after all. She didn't have her arm draped around his shoulders anymore. They were holding hands. She was still sitting close. He could still sense her inner goodness and her inner goddess. But there was no desire, no lust, only understanding, love and kindness. Yes, she said, that grand pride in her voice. I was 14, the size of a stick, and I had $100. How did you survive? Make a living, stay off the street. She looked him in the eye, her defiant green eyes, never to be conquered. Winston Churchill, standing up to the Nazis, our finest hour. And that saucy, defiant redhead said with no shame in her voice, well, my good man, I lied about my age and I worked in a strip joint. He laughed. That reaction surprised them both. Then he said something he'd heard his granddaughter say, the sassy one. You go, girl. She laughed too. She slapped his chest with her open palm. It made a smacking sound that didn't hurt. Thanks, mister, she said. Thanks for not telling me that I'm a bad girl. He hugged her. God, he felt like a man. Ah, he said. And that was all he said. Ah. And they were silent, and he loved her more for her silence than he had loved her for all her words. They just held hands until the sun went down. You going home, cowboy? She asked him at last. I got a cell phone in my pocket. Call your people. Tell them where you are. Tell them to come get you. I'll wait with you till they come. I don't know, he said. I feel good now. If I could always feel this way, I'd call home in a heartbeat. But I won't always feel this way. Sooner or later, that damned old age will get me, and I'll be useless again. Yeah, you, she said. You have always ride to the rescue. Save everybody from the desperados. You can't grow old and be useless. Depend on them to look after you. You goddamn right, he said in a voice that surprised him. I get useless, and they look at me with compassion in their eyes. And it hurts. It's all I can do not to fall on my knees and beg them, don't love me, I'm a waste of time, I've got nothing to give anymore. She hugged him, and he knew she was his mother. And he knew she was going to whisper. And she did. My son, beloved, I'm going to tell you something that only the wise know. It is enough just to be here and to be loved. You do great things. You change the world for the better forever just by letting them love you. Go home, grow old, sit on the sofa. Let them sit beside you, hold your hand and love you. This is all they need from you, but they need this from you. Give them that, and you are giving more than you ever gave when you were young and strong and sacrificed your life's blood for them with no regret and not even any desire for them to know that you gave. He wept. God, how he wept, because his mother's words were true, and he wanted to go home. He wanted to take her cell phone, make that call, wait with her until his family came to get him. But he didn't have to. She kissed him again, this saucy lady with green eyes, his young mother. She dried his tears, she dried her own. Look, she said, look in the direction from which you saw me coming. There is just enough light to see. He looked and he saw his wife, his kids, his grandkids, his great-grandkids. They were all coming, walking to him, holding out their arms. He stood. He took a step. He fell into the arms of his wife of 50 years. And then he was surrounded by a whole tribe of people who needed him, and always would, especially when that beautiful day came, when all he could do was let himself be loved. A long time later, after all the crying and hugging in the dark, the old man looked around and she was there, his mother. His young mother, who was beautiful and enjoyed being all she was, had been whatever be, and in this moment most of all this time of his family reunion, she stood back apart, silent, like a stranger. She smiled when she saw that he was finally looking for her. I needed you to still be here. I know. And here I am. He spoke to his wife. Honey, this is... But that was as far as he got. His wife was grinning big time and rushing to the lovely young redhead with arms outstretched. I know who this is, his wife said. This is a good woman who found you here and called me and told me where to find you. The two ladies embraced. Old wife, young mother. Both ladies loved the old man. So does it matter who they were? Does it matter that only one of them understood that it took the crossing of the divide to save the man and send him, a living man, back to his family? Do we have to know everything? Yes, said the redhead, kissing her daughter-in-law on the cheek for the first time. I knew he'd be here. I didn't know if you'd find him dead or alive, but I knew he'd be here because I'd made up my mind to sit here and talk to him until you could gather your people and find your way.